She's so thin only.
All right, welcome back everyone.
I'm going to get this thing also today. The spark. I'm sitting next to her.
Oh,
You're going to get the spark.
Exactly, yes. All right, let's just start with just a few minutes of silence. Yeah. I've been trying any of the practices, surrender, self-inquiry over the last day or two, and if so, how that's been. If you've tried it at all during daily life, what have your experiences been? If even positive or negative or anything.
For me, an analogy came to my mind yesterday while I was just trying to understand who am I. So it felt like it's like a Tesla car, like a driverless car, and like it's an autopilot, and it feels like I'm just holding the steering wheel, and I feel it looks like I'm driving, but I'm not actually driving. Something else is driving it automatically. So that analogy just hit me, and like it just struck me like, okay, it looks like something like that is happening. And today I felt like I'm a container. Like my body is a container.
Yes.
There's something else inside it. Like.
Great. So just continue that, exactly.
Yeah.
Precisely, continue that. Yeah, I mean, it's very accurate. Actually, I like that analogy of the steering wheel because it is very true. It's like if you gave a child, a toy steering wheel, and they were sitting next to you. You're driving the car, and they think they're driving the car, right? They're turning left when you're turning left, right? It seems like there's some correlation between, like, oh yeah, I'm turning left, and the car seems to be turning left, I turn right, the car turns right, but actually there's no connection at all. There's just an illusion of a connection. So, exactly, yeah. Anybody else? One of the things which is interesting is, is as you try these techniques, right, even a little bit over the day, you'll see more clearly the obstacles to practicing them, basically. And I always say, right, like I feel like many people I talk to, initially when they start the practice, it may seem like, oh, things are going so great, right? And then as they do it more and more, they'll start to see over time, like, oh my God, like, oh, I thought I was doing the practice so much, but now I see more clearly how much I wasn't doing it. It's like you see the landscape more clearly. So it's interesting from that standpoint.
But for me, it's opposite actually. Initially, I find it very hard.
Okay.
Because now I can, at least I know what to do.
Yeah.
And that clarity is there. But see, I have told you before, I always go with Upadeshasaram or that's my mind. I try to see what was what is the real thing. What is inside you? What is ulladu?
Yes. What's inside?
That's the way I was trying, but same brick wall at the end, and trying to knock again. That's
good. I mean, that's great. But that knocking that's all you can do, and that's enough. That's exactly right. It's can you knock on that door continuously? That's really what it is, right? It's the continuity of that knocking, that then creates what you're looking for.
Yeah. For me, I think from my experience over the year, I'm able to differentiate myself, how I am in the worldly things, and what is my nature. Okay. So, it's kind of something close to what her example, when your nature is what you are, okay, but at the same time we are dealing with the nature. So when I see myself how my own nature, everything becomes effortless. I don't need to push anything. I don't need to strive for anything. But even sometimes looks very silly with respect to the worldly things, how I'm behaving, but that is only need-based. Earlier I used to put a lot of things to be more in the worldly rather than hiding my nature. So my own nature become getting more and more effortless, and also how I am trying to be in the nature, worldly things, it's minimized.
So you feel like you're a lot of the worldly things you had identified with before, and now you're kind of, they're kind of more out there. essentially.
Only need based for worldly things.
Can you explain, elaborate? What
Like
you,
for,
what do you
like for
mean?
example, like when I used to put myself attached to everything which is not required. For example, like when I need to make money. Okay, so that is a need. Okay, let me put in a simple thing. Anything that is a need, that is very nature. For example, my hunger is like it is there.
Sure.
Okay, how I am going to meet that hunger is worldly.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
I can eat like simple fruit, and
Yes.
similarly sleep is anything that is needed is natural thing.
Sure.
And for that I don't need to put any effort. Like I don't need to put. But when I'm trying to extrapolate these things to the worldly things, for example, I need some money to survive. Like I need some clothes. I need to shelter. But when I'm trying to like make it more into worldly things, that become like more effort. But those things, when I minimize it, life is much better. Like that's what it's like Ramana Maharshi teaching is like able to see how when we are close to nature, our own nature, things are very very simple. Like yeah.
So basically, what you're saying is when your desires are limited to what your needs are, really, life is simpler.
Needs are very natural. Like I said, there are like
Right.
hunger,
But
sleep.
if you go beyond the needs, then you're creating problems. is what you're saying.
Yeah. That's what
Makes
I'm
sense.
putting myself into, the worldly things.
Right. The worldly things that are beyond your needs.
Needs.
Right.
Yeah, but the needs are natural. Like there's
Right.
we all have hunger. We all have
Sure.
sleep. We all shelter. Okay. So yeah, that's what. So that's what like even maybe you can call me a little bit crazy. That's also make me away from a lot of rituals. I don't know whether I need any rituals. Like when I'm with my own nature, everything is like it's a kind of symphony. Like yeah.
Great. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, so of course, like I'm being dragged into worldly things, okay, but the awareness is very more. Even when we are talking now, I need a small place to sit, whether here, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
Okay? Yeah.
No, minimization. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, and that is exactly what happens when you do the practice and your attachments decrease. And they tend to decrease towards the level of your needs rather than other things.
It is kind of unexplainable ananda. I don't want to say santosha. It's kind of, I mean, the distinction between santosha and ananda. Santosha is always external dependent. Ananda is like it's already there. Okay?
More blissful, huh?
Blissful, yeah, blissful.
So you experience more inner bliss, is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah. I mean, it's a kind of, I mean, it's, yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand. That makes sense. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
So,
That makes sense.
so I try to go like past the quietness and then like being very natural, things like that. But that just like you pointed out, hunt for more, where that feeling is, that experience is more and more, and I feel more emotional. Or is it because maybe I'm intensely searching?
It might be.
Every time becomes very emotional, and I feel maybe the experience is a deeper emotion, kind of a feeling. How you feel?
What kind of emotions?
Like how you are, like either you are upset or whether you are extremely happy, like kind of emotion, and like heart is kind of beating or fast breathing, or you feel that maybe because intense search, or I do not know, the whole thing is coming to the heart, kind of a feeling.
It might be, but also one of the things that happens as you do these practices is they are, normally we have basically defenses in the mind against feeling a lot of things that are like under the surface, basically, in the unconscious. And sometimes when you do the practice intensely, those defenses will get lowered. So those emotions sometimes rise into awareness as a result of that, which is good, because then they can be fed into the practice. These are the vasanas, basically. It's a way of looking at them. So it could be that you're experiencing some of those things.
Could it be fear?
Sure, of course.
What did you say?
Yes.
Fear.
Fear.
Fear, no fear or anything.
It could be fear, it could be a lot of things. It could be a lot of things that are connected to other things in your life, Yeah. basically. Or it could be connected to the practice. I mean, of course, it can be connected to the
Like
practice itself.
I would call it like when you are intense in doing something,
Mhm.
that's a kind of a feeling maybe.
Okay. No, it's just something, it's not a bad thing if it's connected to other things in your life, it's a good thing. So whatever arises, the point is, right, if you're doing, let's say, self-inquiry, whatever arises is just more fuel for the inquiry.
Yeah, and more concentration.
Who's experiencing this emotion? That's the point. That's everything can be fed into that. And if it is fear that arises, which is also common, because ultimately, right, why would fear arise? Because for a lot of reasons, but fundamentally, the mind fears what it can't understand, basically, and the self cannot be understood by the mind being a product of the self. So, what is unseeable and unhearable and unfeelable and unimaginable and unthinkable, right, represents itself to the mind as like darkness in some sense, even though it's not, it's pure light. So, if one approaches that door, it's quite possible that one experiences fear,
The one you say talk about the hunting, what uncomfortable feeling. So many times I have backed out. Now I'm not comfortable in pursuing that approach. I'm more comfortable with waiting.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, a waiting approach is more like surrender, basically. You can view it that way. It's simply just keep the vigilance and let go. So that's more surrender. I mean, it's perfect. It's the other side of the coin. Practically almost the same thing, just slightly different flavors.
So going back to that previous point you made about the fear. So right now, my sense of grounded reality is basically my ego, right? And it feels solid, even though it's not.
That's right.
Occasionally, I get the glimpses of how it's not.
Yeah.
However, without the affirming experience of what is grounded reality, it feels hard to let go of the only thing I know. The only thing I know is my experience through my ego, through my mind.
Yes.
So, so then when I'm seeking the subject, it feels like the subject is seeking the subject, because it kind of ties itself into a loop.
Subject becomes subject.
No, so in a triad, right? Like the subject, object, and experience. And today I was practicing. Okay, I'm aware. I was practicing the surrender, and I was also practicing the inquiry, and I was aware of all the experiences. And when I asked the question, who is actually experiencing? And this trying to find the seat of awareness, the how do I describe this? It was like I would always fall back into just that sakshi bhava, right? Like that, but that I know that's an egoic structure.
Right. Well, it's a thought. It's really the thought of the sakshi bhava.
Yeah.
Is really what it is. Yeah, absolutely. Of course.
So it's very much. I feel like I'm not getting past these egoic structures. It's just like as if my ego is just creating more and more egoic structures.
Yeah. Well, that's
is that a defense?
I mean, yes, it's exactly the same door, the same wall. So it's and the wall manifests in different ways, at different points. But it's effectively right. See, what's happening is ultimately what's required is a perspective shift that cannot be forced.
Yeah.
So all you can do is, it's like with those optical illusions, which you look at, you have to stare at, and then they suddenly change, and you can't make it change. You have to stare at it, and then eventually your brain just flips it, So it's like that. So, because what am I really? Because you're right, the subject is looking for the subject, like really what's going on there. And so, all you can do is attempt the looking. And I'll also say, right, there is Yeah, I mean, there's a. You mentioned like it's difficult to give up the only thing that you know, but yeah, you don't. Luckily, you don't have to make the decision to give it up. You attempt to look for what you are, and when you attempt to look for what you are, that looking, maintained in continuity, slowly breaks the attachments, increases peace, increases the desire for liberation, and therefore increases the intensity and continuity of the practice, and that further weakens the attachments, and that cycle will slowly, automatically create sufficient faith that a yielding will automatically occur. It's not like, oh, I have to make the decision right now that I'm going to give up what I know for this unknown thing. It's all you have to do is enough to just do the practice. Whatever you do in the practice right now, that's all you can do. That's sufficient.
No,
Yeah.
I already felt that today. That was very beautifully said, because I already felt like when I was doing the practice, again, I have a hard time distinguishing if I'm practicing surrender or self-inquiry. They seem to blend.
No, they're very similar. They're very
Right?
similar in some
Yeah.
ways. Yeah.
So then I also noticed that there are a lot of moments during the day when we do unconscious things, or we act unconsciously.
Yeah.
And this is bringing awareness into that.
Yes.
And it's almost a way of naming. So like the moment you try to consciously, intentionally observe, and then try to unblend from the like to take a very specific example, there was some crunchy stuff on the table and I put one in my mouth, and unconsciously I would have put 5 or 6 in my mouth, and this was like close to lunchtime, and there was a part of me that just said, who is enjoying this?
Yeah.
And immediately it just unblended that attraction for that snack, and
Weakened, yeah.
it just, I don't know, it just disappeared.
Yeah, it can weaken like that, absolutely. Because the reason you care about it is because it's gonna give me happiness or something. But as soon as you notice like, oh, I don't know who I am, then that connection to my happiness weakens in that moment.
Or is it like a part of me that is habitually connected with the experience, with the past experience? Is it the memory of a past experience that's reactivated in the moment?
I mean, yeah, it might be that, and you're bringing consciousness to it might weaken the automatic connection. Yeah, that might be true too. Sure. I mean, you think about it in different ways, I think, but the point is, one way or the other, I think identity matters. The noting of ultimately the noting of the fact that you don't know who you are. That's at least the self-inquiry standpoint, and then from the surrender standpoint, it's just the pleasure of giving up effort, basically. Although you're keeping effort on the practice, but there's so much that's gained from. I mean, surrender again. That's more. Yeah, I mean, it's very informed by bhakti. It's the ecstasy of letting go.
Yeah.
Is what it is. It's the ecstasy of total spontaneity. Right? That's true of inquiry too. It's when you let go of control, you get to have the pleasure of surprise. What's going to happen next? I don't know.
But to me,
Go ahead.
everything looks the same.
Can you explain self-inquiry one more time?
Yes, of course. So
And the subtle difference between surrender
and self-inquiry.
Yeah, it's very-
So self-inquiry again is and it's difficult because I feel like I should use different words, but it's to come up with different words. But basically, right, again and again, right, in this sort of triangle of the subject, the object, and the experience, right? What are these three things? The object is whatever it is you're experiencing. There's outer things you're experiencing, and there's so-called inner things that you're experiencing. The inner things you're experiencing are also outer things, but they're just slightly more on the inside, so to say, right? They are, all the sense perceptions, all the emotions, anything that's thought, any images that come to mind, any dreams, memories, hopes, etc. Those are all objects, basically. And as you know any of these objects, any of these experiences, you simultaneously know the so-called subject, which is the experiencer of these objects. Like, I know not only that I see that chair there, but I also know that I'm here seeing it. So it's a separate piece of information. And then that total experience, you can the total combination of information we can call, the experience as a whole. So there's the experienced, the experiencer, and the experienced, you might say. Anyway, the chair, if I'm looking at it, it seems fairly clear what that is, what that object is. It's this visual piece of information. I feel the visual is easiest really to point to. You can kind of circle it, or if there's something that's touching me, okay, this is a specific sensation of touch, right, that I'm feeling right now. Or if there's a memory or an image, whatever it is, they're all kind of discrete things of sorts. You can kind of isolate them. Yes, this is what I'm experiencing. It's all about the one's experience, it's not really, we're not so concerned with what's really happening, that's irrelevant. We're just looking at our own subjective experience, because it could be a dream, it doesn't matter, it's the same inquiry. Anyway, the point is, so in inquiry we have the object and then we have the subject, which is our sense of self-awareness. So that sense of self-awareness, which is also what we casually call I, what does that correspond to in our total experience at the moment? Like right now, this second, we have all the objects we're experiencing, like my voice, this room, any thoughts and feelings that you're having right now, and simultaneously also the feeling, if there's no good word for it, feeling / experience of oneself. So whatever that is, whatever you want to call that, whatever that is, we're trying to turn our attention towards that. Just like I could say, focus on the feeling of the right pinky, your right pinky right now, and immediately you could turn your attention, feeling what that pinky is feeling. Right? You could focus on that. Similarly, if I say, focus on you, well, now where does your mind go? So then you try that, focus on yourself, and then you investigate, well, where is my mind now? And whatever your mind has settled on, wherever your attention is focused, you effectively ask yourself, is this actually an object? That is to say, is it something of which I'm aware? And the answer inevitably is yes. So then obviously that's not you. So again, you have to revisit. In that moment when you see that object, again, that same subject is right there. I'm viewing the object. It's the very same subject that started out, that started the inquiry, And again, well, where am I then? Where am I then? What is the light which sees this object? All these metaphors are there. They're all kind of like mixed metaphors, right? Because it's the light that sees the object. It's the eye that sees the object via the light. It's the camera that looks, It's the observer. It's the audience in the theater. It's like all mixed metaphors. But the point is, very simply, we have this very obvious, self-evident, every day, every second experience of ourselves coupled with all the objects. So our self piece of that, we're trying to isolate out and look at that. Like, okay, what's that part? How do I know I'm here? I know why the objects are here. They all have concrete manifestations in my mind. But there's this other thing which I seem to also know. What is that linked to? What is that correlated to? What is its form? How do I know it?
Can you just maybe to make it more easier, or at least me, give some chain of thoughts of examples, like when you say.
Well, why don't you tell me right now? When you turn your mind towards yourself, where does your attention go? Where are you right now? Where is you?
So I am as an individual, I have a body, and then I have inner self, which is not the body. And then so those examples I keep on checking out to reduce and then go.
So do you see, right? So for example, right, let's start with the body, right?
Yeah.
So when you say I'm the body, right? Immediately, well, you already know that's not quite true, because what we mean, this particular notion of I, which is the only notion of I really, is that which is
changeless.
that which is experiencing, experiencing the object. So the body is how do we have a body? Like, it's a certain visual stimulus, it's a certain like tactile stimulus, right? It has a certain feel to it. Okay, it has a certain dimension to it, exists in time, it looks a certain way. Okay, that is an object of your experience. So the one who experiences that, you see you're experiencing that, right?
Yeah.
So, and you know you're experiencing that, right?
That
so,
is changeless also.
the change
that doesn't change.
Well, it doesn't change relative to the objects, but I mean it's yeah, I mean, you could say that. That's correct. I mean, I'm only hesitating a little bit because it's
See, the body is continuously changing, right? From baby to adulthood to teenager to adulthood to Budappa to death, right? So the body is an object. The changeless thing that is observing these changes is you.
what feels
And
like
that is conscious.
what feels like you.
But
So
how do you
because I
That is it.
Maybe like
Well, no, so
it's
it's an investigation, okay? I will just say, right, so it's interesting, right, because technically speaking, right, what we're looking for what feels like us. What feels like us. And I emphasize this only because, right, technically speaking, we're looking for the waking ego. That's what we're looking for. You see, the sense of self changes in dream and deep sleep, especially in deep sleep. Dreaming, argue this, but the deep sleep, what normally feels, see, in deep sleep we do not have a sense of separate objects and subjects.
Right.
But here we do. So we're looking for the waking ego, which is what, let's just say, right now, in right this moment, what feels like me. What feels like me. Now, the thing is, when you look for what feels like me, the thing is, it's, our conception of it is full of logical contradictions. Because like, oh yeah, it feels like I'm the body. But then when you actually look at that and you think about it for a second, well, I can't be the body. Because I'm what's aware of the body. So that cannot be me. I thought it felt like it was me, but that feeling cannot be correct. So what is aware of that feeling is then the question. Like, I am aware of that feeling, obviously. What's that I? What is that thing which, like, I feel like I'm here somewhere I exist somehow, in some space, in some sphere, in some way. I'm somehow the experiencer of this thing called the body right now. So that's what we're looking for. And if we look for that, then it will eventually turn out to be quite different than what we initially thought it to be. That's the key point. Yeah.
So
Does that make sense?
keep on because then there is no logic, right? You keep on thinking, okay, I'm the body, but I'm not the body because I'm experiencing the body, and then you look for answer again.
Yes.
And then you will hit again to another wall that.
And again, you're there. Every wall, you are there observing it. You see, it's not a matter of a
You're describing the process here, right? What is he's asked? Original question was what is an anya? What is the inquiry?
yes.
Bhagavan has defined what the inquiry is, but then the process is what Akilesh is making it simple for you to take it through.
Yeah.
And then the process will stop because when your logic is not there to think more,
Yeah.
and you stay in that state for
Well,
when you're doing the practice.
wherever you
understanding.
are, whatever you're experiencing, right? Let's just suppose, for example, like, well, I don't know where to go next.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that experience of I don't know where to go next is itself a thought. You see that? I'm experiencing that thought. I'm experiencing the thought of I don't know where to go next. Right? It's like, I've used this metaphor before, I like this metaphor. It's as if you're looking for a flashlight, okay? And you're in a dark room and you're shining the flashlight on a banner which says, I don't know where the flashlight is. I don't know how to find the flashlight. Right? The very light that you're looking for is shining on that thought, right? So there's always, you're always there, no matter what is happening. Whether it's numbness, indifference, apathy, or boredom, or whatever negative state you want to call it, you're always there as a witness of it. So this is the joy and the riddle of inquiry, because it's not far away. It's like, I'm right here. How can it be that I'm right here, but I can't see what I am? It's insane, right? It's completely crazy. That's what the joy.
Akilesh, just to be clear, this is not an intellectual
Yeah,
exercise.
right.
That is there.
No,
It's not like you're figuring out.
Correct.
Some logic.
But when you do the technique or the practice,
You're sincerely.
You're using some logic at a certain point in a certain limited way.
Very limited way
Yes.
to observe or observe
Yes.
logic.
Yes. Yes.
So
exactly.
my
That's,
revelation is to what Rajji said, and the knowledge is the obstacle for self-inquiry.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
well, no.
Because every time, Savita ji mentioned, what she knows is holding her, even though she knows what that's not correct.
Yeah.
So what she knows is because of your knowledge. Like since you are born
Yeah.
with your senses, you are building up this knowledge. Every time, I mean, my personal experience, I'm telling.
Tell me.
So every time when I'm trying to do the self-inquiry, like you said, the flashlight is there, okay? But my past knowledge is making it to not to there, because more and more I drop the logic, more and more I drop my knowledge, it's like opening up.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're right.
So it
Yeah.
looks like very silly, like that's what I brought, the world beings and the nature, our own nature. Our own nature needs nothing.
Yeah.
But only when we are dealing with the external world, you need certain knowledge base.
Yeah.
To deal with, like for example, you said that chair.
Transactional world.
You said that chair.
Yes.
I need to have a knowledge that a chair with 4 legs to sit. Okay. But for me, I don't need to be with my own nature. I don't need any of this knowledge to see that as is.
Yes, sure.
I don't. You can call it as chair only because based on your knowledge base.
Sure.
But when I do the witness mode, it doesn't matter to me. It's a chair or anything. I'm just seeing it is no judgment, no naming, nothing. I mean, that's what I'm feeling.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's true. I mean, I will just say, right, I mean, so yeah, I mean, I agree with you. You know, I will just say, right, just one caveat I'll say to that is, it's true, but at the same time, the reality is, experience itself, if there's such a thing, if you say, I'm experiencing, the very moment you think I'm experiencing anything in any form or fashion, there's already concept involved.
Yeah, but here is my thing, okay? Why I need to experience? I don't see the experience itself is mind, okay?
Yeah.
That means it has some input from the past. The experience means always you can't experience anything without knowledge.
Okay.
Okay, the experience always say, oh, it is sweet means
Yeah.
you already
Yeah.
input the data,
Yeah.
feed to your system that this is sweet, this is sour.
AI.
Okay, no, it's not it's knowledge. It needn't you put in a computer or you. But when I am saying is self-inquiry is I need to drop that one. Every piece of my knowledge is becoming an obstacle for
Yeah, in a way that's
every
true.
piece of, I mean that's what my revelation. Okay, so like I said, when you're seeing this when I'm in the witness mode, I don't need to attach my knowledge to that one. My self-inquiry is just seeing that as is. That's it.
Basically, you're saying observing without language.
Anything, any
Yeah.
language is again an
Right.
input, past base.
There's for sure, there's an element of unwinding knowledge or escaping your habitual way of looking at things. But, but self-inquiry is, you are looking for the subject. There's that element too. You're looking for what is observing.
Yeah, but that's what I'm telling you.
So-
I am observing, but I don't need to distinguish. See, including myself, become the so-called object, but the object need not be a particular feature. Okay, that's what I'm trying to tell. I don't need to put some metaphor or some thing to call it as a specific. Please say all these are objects. I agree.
Krishna, can I add a thought there? So, what you're saying is that, okay, I'm looking at an object and there's a part of me the mind automatically names that
Identifies
object.
that, yeah.
The mind automatically is coming up with memories of, things associated with that object.
Yeah.
And what Akilesh ji is saying is like we are actually trying to find the subject. So all you have to do then, and correct me if I'm wrong, is ask who is naming that.
No, that's obvious.
Right?
That's obvious.
Right, but then that's when you objectify the process itself. You are then distancing, unblending from that process itself. There is no need to reject the process, or there is no need to reject knowledge. There is no need to say that it's an obstacle. Everything is grist for the mill.
Yeah, I would agree with that because there's a dangerous way. I think it's not dangerous, but it's not quite correct in my opinion that it's not exactly precisely that thoughts are themselves problems. You see, it's identification with thought that's the problem actually, right? This is why in surrender, for example, right? I encourage you not to push thought away. It's not that you're trying to suppress anything. You're trying to not get absorbed in it and take it to be real. That's the issue, actually. Because whatever, in the transactional world, if thought exists. It's not there. It's just like a piece of wood. Okay, it's not by itself a danger. Anything in the world is, in a sense, made of thought. The issue is, can one see that the thought seems to be, is not what it seems to be, actually. There is a sense, this is why in the Gita, right, what is said, right? The wise see inaction in action, and action in inaction, right? So the point is not that one has to literally stop doing everything physically speaking. That's not the point. That's one possibility, but as Ramana says, sitting like a stone is also a vasana. This is action. Sitting like a stone is also an action. So it's just a specific kind of action. Similarly, right, like the categories with which we call that a chair are not themselves problematic. But what's problematic is identification with the mind, identification with the categorizing facility, perhaps you could say,
Yeah.
So,
See, that's what I'm telling. That's a chair. Okay, my mind can identify that object as a chair. Okay.
yeah.
But it need not be a specific thing I'm looking for. I just see that as is. That's it. The problem I am seeing is I understand even what I'm trying to say is it's not become like a stone-like thing. Okay, you are observing everything. Okay, but at the same time when you're observing, Savita ji said, okay, all our knowledge can be biased, like with vasanas.
Yeah.
Okay. So the danger I am seeing here is, if your knowledge is not judgmental, I don't know whether that can be or not. Okay, again, that can be. Who is going to say whether it is judgmental or not? Okay, that's another question. But we can see when we are dealing, like she mentioned, the ego. That's a biased knowledge.
Sure.
Okay, because you are judging, your perception is better than the reality. That's what ego, correct? Your perception is relatively different from what the reality. So from that perspective, I'm saying seeing things as
So Krishna, if I can just add, if you're
Please, go ahead.
No, but aren't these all a big bundle of thoughts, and can't you just dispense with them and say who are these thoughts happening to, and then stick to the inquiry? Why does this, whether it is I'm getting tied by that, or the knowledge of that thing, whether that's going to be harmful for me, that I have to get rid of that knowledge of it, all that is additional thoughts. Shouldn't we instead
But what is the thought? Is it just knowledge?
Why are you worried about that? That's yet another thought. So instead find out to whom even that thought sequence is happening.
Yeah.
That's all. You've got to keep hunting for that.
Yeah, there's no
That
end.
source.
There's no end to
Because
the illusion.
you're trying to not get rid of all your knowledge, get rid of
Exactly.
all
There's
your
no need to have all
identity.
these concepts.
No need for that.
There's
Correct.
just
No need.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Exactly correct.
So you keep questioning who is experiencing it.
Yeah, just go
Yes,
back to that.
just go back to the
That is
subject
a
every time.
Source of the Aita.
Yeah, that's right. It's exactly right.
And sorry, just to clarify, when you say surrender, right?
Yes.
So to differentiate between self-inquiry and surrender, surrender is where you I mean, can you explain?
Yeah. So that's good. I'm glad I was going to literally
Because-
mention that point. So next, I'm
because he
glad you
asked
asked
us
that. So yeah. So I mean, the only difference between surrender, it's just a slight flavor difference, right? So surrender, the difference is you're not actively looking for the subject. What you're doing is you are trying to essentially, not let your attention get absorbed in any particular object, right? So you're pulling your attention away from the objects without suppressing or ignoring them, allowing them to be in the background, but your foreground attention, you're pulling away from the objects. And, when you pull them away, they get absorbed in other objects, and you pull them away and pull them away and pull them away and pull them away. Well, when you pull your attention away from the objects and you bring it to, where do you bring it to? To the subject, exactly. Where else can it go, right? When you pull away from the objects, there's only one place it can go. It's towards the subject, and you pull it towards the subject, and then that turns out to be another object again, and then you pull it again and pull it again and pull it again. So it's a very similar process, really, to inquiry, because inquiry is I'm hunting the subject, and as I hunt the subject, I first land on the body, and then I land on a concept, and I land on this, and I land on that, and I keep saying who's aware, who's aware, who's aware, who's aware, right? So in the process of inquiry, what are we doing to the objects? What are we doing to the objects? We're ignoring them. We're ignoring them. Exactly. You're systematically ignoring the objects.
That's
right?
what I'm trying to say, right? When you see with so many objects, I'm trying to detach. It's not an effort. I'm not putting an effort. Okay, I'm just seeing them as an object, and so that I'm going to see who is observing these objects. So that's why I'm trying to drop that knowledge base, attach it to the objects. Okay.
Right, but the way you should do that in self-inquiry is by trying to turn to the subject. And the way you do that in surrender is by trying to withdraw your attention from the object.
Exactly.
Yeah. See, that's what in my understanding. So the moment you try to try to identify the object, you're stuck with the object.
So,
I would say that a thought about the object is not the problem. The problem is your attention getting absorbed in something, into the object or into the thought about it. The thought about an object is also itself an object. You see, I think this is a chair. That's a thought. Okay, so that thought is there. That thought's not a problem. The problem is my attention getting sunk into that thought, where I'm like, oh, okay, well then this thought leads to another thought, leads to another thought, and now I'm thinking about what chair I want to buy, my IKEA next, or whatever it is, right? Like there's some series of thoughts that become taken to be real, where one forgets the in surrender. Basically, what we're trying to do is you're trying to keep in mind the continuously unreal nature of
Maybe
these objects.
we are thinking the same thing in a different way.
It's
My way
possible.
of is like scanning the things. That's it. Not just like its chair is there. Okay, like Raj is there. You are there. That's it. Like I'm not, because the objects are there. I'm accepting the objects are there.
but are you labeling them?
Who is accepting the object?
The moment I label, labeling is okay, but going a little bit deeper, the scanning part includes the labeling. Okay?
So
who
labeling
is
and
doing
letting go.
all that?
Yeah, labeling, that's what I'm
Krishna,
telling you.
who
Okay?
is doing all that?
Wait.
That is the subject. That is the subject.
That is
You
the
don't
point of
care about
inquiry.
the object at all. Why do you want to label it also?
Doesn't matter.
Why?
Okay, for to satisfy Akilesh.
No, label or don't label. The
Okay.
point is not labeling.
Even I don't
Nothing
want.
wrong with labeling.
No, I don't want to
Yeah,
do
you
that
can label or
also.
not label, doesn't matter.
But to satisfy Akhilesh's argument, okay, I'm just saying, okay, it's an object. That's it. I don't. That's what I earlier I
No,
said. I don't even care about whether it's chair or
The
not.
point is, right? The objects are not the point. The point is pulling your attention away from the object. That's the point.
That's the-
So whether you label them or not label them, the labeling is itself an object.
Yeah.
So the labeling, the physical, the visual manifestations, the labeling, all the concepts related to labeling,
Has to go.
all my desires, they don't have to go. They have to be noticed as merely unreal phenomena, and you have to. It's basically like it's like I give an analogy of you're looking at a mirror, okay, and if I say I want you to notice the reflective surface of the mirror, the reflective surface of the mirror. When you try to notice the actual silver surface of the mirror, what happens to the objects in the mirror? What happens?
Your
They go blurry.
attention.
They go blurry, exactly. They go blurry.
Or the TV screen
Yes.
example you gave.
Yeah, same TV screen example. Ignore the TV screen.
Take
Exactly.
your glasses off.
Yeah.
Become blurry.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
You're worrying about something at work and looking at the TV screen, and
everything.
so that's the way he's saying to do the surrender.
Exactly. So now, as soon as you notice the silvery surface of the mirror, okay, instantly, almost, you can view it as instant, okay. That very blur is a reflection in another mirror. You can view it that way, okay. There's another. Immediately, you're looking at another mirror. Immediately, you're looking at another mirror, and immediately, again, ideally, you would again notice the silvery surface of that mirror, okay, and again it blurs, and again, you're looking at a third mirror. And mirror after mirror after mirror goes like this, right? Now what happens is, as you do this more and more continuously and more intensely, right? The bouncing between mirrors happens, more and more continuously, basically, like little drops, right? Little dots are being added. And if the dots become closer and closer together and faster, right? The mind can draw a line between them, basically, That line is what we want. That's what we want. We want to be able to see that line. But basically, that's what's happening.
Is that what the surrender is?
Yeah, this is surrender. This is definitely surrender.
See, Bhagavan has said that either you inquire or surrender. I understood from the book, surrender means you give you put all your problems to me.
Yes.
And don't expect anything and lead your life.
Yes.
That's the basic definition.
Yeah.
What I understood as, don't you do whatever comes to you, you accept it and continue your life without having any desire. I don't want this, I want this. You cannot say
that's a bhakti kind of surrender.
Bhakti kind. That's a surrender. I thought
So the way I interpret that, it's exactly that. But the way I interpret that is that when one surrenders deeply, right, one is surrendering one's control over all the objects, and that includes one's thoughts and feelings.
To
right?
God, to him.
To God.
Yeah, right.
Sure, you can say to God, 100%, right? You're offering up your control over everything. You're offering up your willpower vis-a-vis the entire world of objects, but including your feelings and thoughts, right? So that is exactly that, right? When one does that, one is withdrawing one's attention from the objects. That's exactly what it is, because in as much as you're sunk in the objects.
You are giving a method for that.
Yeah, I'm giving a method.
What he said was that you cannot have any more desire. You accept whatever comes your way. That's it, period. You cannot say, I want this, I want that to the God again. You cannot request anything from God also.
Yeah, see, it's
This is what also
That is
withdrawing
desire,
from desire.
I interpret that as this, because the thing is, it's not like you have control. I don't see that you have control over your specific thoughts. Okay, so when one says I withdraw my desire, I would say that primarily what that really means is I withdraw my attention and I withdraw my willpower, basically, and that automatically means you are withdrawing, you're letting go of everything.
So you're basically acknowledging that you don't have agency, right? And you acknowledge that you don't have agency.
Acknowledge you don't have agency, because otherwise you're getting to, if you interpret it in a different way, then you're going to get into an internal war with yourself. Like, I shouldn't have this feeling. Like, I want this. I shouldn't have that. And you're going to berate yourself over it. I beat yourself. I surrender this. This kind of conflict. We don't want that conflict, right? Anything that arises is fine. Whatever emotions arise, let them arise, and you can simply let go and pull inward, basically.
But Bhagavan says that surrender is very easy. He always says surrender is the easiest way.
Well, surrender is
people
certainly...
say inquiry is so difficult, why don't you surrender?
Exactly.
He calls it bhakti.
Yes.
Like any nine he compares it to Nayanmar actually. When Nayanmar say, God is everything, he's upper and sundara, they give it. That's it. They don't have anything. They praise, that's it.
Surrender is...
That's what we were talking about yesterday, right? When Akilesh, you were saying about how the illusion of the ego, right?
Yes.
The illusion of everything, and the illusion of the free will.
Yes.
That we think we have free will.
Yes.
It all comes into that, and this is like maybe the bhakti or having God or some object to whom you surrender to can be like a prop, right?
Sure,
It can just be like a help rather than
but here is the challenge I'm seeing,
kind of surrendering
what you
in
are
general.
telling,
Like I think your path is more just the Vedantic path, which
See,
doesn't.
basically, you can view it 100% as surrendering it all to God. But I think it comes to the exact same thing, which the point is that when you let go, when you do not get absorbed in the objects and you relax your willpower, and you can view that 100% as offering it all to God. it's exactly that method. Is it easy? It's certainly extremely simple. Okay, obviously, Bhagavan has said, right? If you have supremely strong desire for liberation, then of course surrender can take you in 1 second to moksha. But the problem is obviously all the attachments. The desire is not supremely strong. So that's the whole problem.
The surrender leads to detachment also. He also said that eventually you come to the same point.
Yes, same point.
Surrender and self.
But more than detachment, isn't it delusion? Aren't we carrying like Swamiji sometimes says, why are you so committed to your unhappiness? Right? It's like you are Satchidananda, but you are so committed to the illusion.
Yeah, because see, the way I see it, it's not a choice you could make because it's what feels like you is born out of that illusion, right? That's why I like these methods, because these methods you can't just choose to switch that, right? What you can do is you can choose to examine. You can choose to examine, and the examination will automatically lead to a series of changes which will allow you to accept. But basically, right, what is this illusion? The illusion is the mind, like see, even with inquiry, right? Why is inquiry so difficult? Because what is looking is the mind. And the mind, it's
Can't kill the mind with the mind.
Well, you can kill the mind with the mind, well, sort of, in a way, but it's nothing else can kill the mind except the mind, or God, you could say. But the problem is the mind is like a hammer for which everything is a nail, right? That's to say what? The mind looks for objects.
Right.
That's the issue. Yeah. So whatever it looks for must be in the form of an object. Now, what's very interesting is, right, what is it that we think we are? What it is that we think we are, aka the waking ego, is, in fact, an extremely special kind of object. It's the subject object, And so it's like a two-faced. On one side, it's an object, on the other side, it's the self, the true self. Right. So the mind, in a sense, can kind of touch it, and in the process of it, it's like Pinocchio, the puppet recognizing it's a puppet. And that moment, it like powers down. Like that very moment of touching it immediately, that's the moment which it has to fall silent,
But ego is also an object.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Ego, intelligence,
that's what I'm saying.
Everything
Yes,
is objects.
Yes, they're all objects, correct. It's exactly what I'm saying. So, but when you look for, the ego is a very, very special object because it's not like the other objects. It's the prism. It's the illusion object. So it's one metaphor I give is it's sort of like it's like if you saw in the distance in the horizon you saw what looked like it looks like a wall of some kind, okay? It's a bright wall, okay? And you drive towards it, right? And as you go towards it, it recedes. It's like farther and farther away, okay? And you keep driving towards it, and suddenly you're on the other side of it, and you realize it wasn't a wall at all. It was like a gap.
That's it.
It's a gap. So it's a gap that looks like a wall. So that's why it's an illusion object, right? It's a very unusual, special object that forms the mind. So that's what we're trying to isolate to that, basically, because that object can only function in the illusory capacity so long as it is attached to sufficient other vibrating thoughts in the mind. Basically, to keep the illusion going, the mind has to keep vibrating in a certain way, basically. We're trying to break, those vibrations are basically attachments. We're trying to weaken those attachments, and then kind of, in that process, eventually illusion breaks down. Because, it's like, so it has to juggle so many balls, and when the balls keep falling, eventually it's just one ball, basically, and it's not juggling anymore at all, so this is what's happening.
Surrender is withdrawing yourself from the object, and self-inquiry is putting your attention to the subject.
Yeah, exactly. That's basically, sure, yes, exactly. So withdrawing without suppressing them, without forcing thoughts out, right? Yeah. Allowing them to be, but constantly recognizing this is unreal, and whatever happens, I'm not using my personal willpower, basically.
So I don't want to touch upon
Bhagavan's definition of jnana vicharam
And
is.
again, I think if I can add.
Oh,
sorry.
You went and then.
No, I was going to say, Akilesh, the two examples that you gave yesterday on surrender, which is a king or a queen
Yes.
sitting there.
Yes.
And so that was very helpful.
Yes.
actually.
Yes. Yes. Sitting on a throne,
The
exactly.
example that he gave, two powerful examples he gave yesterday for surrender. Very valuable tips.
Can you go through them?
Yeah. So one of them was you can imagine that you're royalty and you're sitting on a throne and your only job is to just sit there, basically, and you're surrounded by people who are trying to persuade you that you need to do things, either by fear or temptation, right? Either by desire or hostility, right? And your job is to recognize they're all lying. They're all lying. All of them are lying. And I'm just going to relax. And I don't care what they say. They could tell me the world is burning down. They could tell me, billions of dollars on the other side of that door. It doesn't matter what they say. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. This is irrelevant. This is irrelevant. This is irrelevant. That's one way.
Yes.
And then
Another one, I think you said everything needs to be looked at as somebody begging for your attention, and you just say.
Yeah, same thing, exactly.
Same thing,
Connect.
similar thing.
The same thing. This is also, by the way, the analogy of the Buddha, right? So the Buddha supposedly sits down in the tree, right, under the tree, right, and he sits there for 3 days. And supposedly Mara, who's supposed to be the devil, basically, tries to tempt him to get up. It's exactly this, right? All kinds of pleasures and all kinds of fears, right? Fears for loved ones, duty, every possible attachment is tried, right? The Buddha just passively waits it out. There's waiting. There's
How
surrender.
difficult is that to practice? Like,
Well, of course it's difficult.
right now it works, but
When you practice, no, it
So if I can just expand.
Finish.
Sorry, no. So I was practicing surrender a lot, a little bit of self-inquiry and surrender last couple of days, right? So I mean, since we met again. So driving was an example, and
Yes.
I said, okay, let me practice surrender during the driving. And the first thing was, hey, how can you surrender when you're driving? It's going to be dangerous. So I said, for now, let me surrender that thought.
Okay, yeah, great.
And then I was sort of practicing this phasing in and out, right? I'm aware of the car, I'm aware of the scenery,
Yep.
and then I withdraw from it.
Uh-huh.
And some other thoughts come about work, etc. I move. So I found that it is quite compatible with
Yes,
activity.
it is.
It is not exclusive. It doesn't have to be that fearsome. You can go into the activity with a trust that, hey, I can practice surrender, and then do what the best you can
Yeah. That's
with
right.
that activity. And if something happens and the practice drops off because of your fear, it's okay, resume
Yes.
it again.
Yes.
So that's what I
Yes.
was doing, Akilesh.
Yes,
So
yeah, great.
it.
That's
Okay.
exactly right. What happens is when you do these practices, for a long time, there's this big question. Again, right? Like, how will I do these other activities while I'm doing these practices? And of course, I'm gonna have to re-emphasize to you that. Well, right now, right, you think you're doing them, but you're not doing these other activities, okay? But I will just say, right, the truth of the matter is, right, the mind and the body are fully capable of doing any level of complex activity without you. Any level of complex activity without you. One example, I mean, I give this example, not everybody can relate to this.
What do you mean?
Without
Without you.
Without you, without your effort, without your egoistic you,
Yeah.
yes. Without what feels like your personal effort,
Without
let's put it
your
that way.
willpower.
Without your willpower,
or just
correct.
by random, by
Not
action.
not random. It's just the same way, for example, right, like your heart beats without your effort, just the same way that you breathe without effort, and just the same way that, you can be thinking about something and then you've walked to a destination, without having thought about that. But much more complex activities than that can be done is the reality, right? Because you have many examples, I always like this, these examples of like,
A simple thing in driving.
Yeah.
Like when I go to the office, correct? You go to the office 5 days, automatically you hear on self, like you don't need to know where to take left and right.
Yes.
It happens
No,
automatically.
that
Yes.
effortlessness.
Yeah.
Yes, effortless. Yeah. But it's even more complex thing than driving can happen. I was just reading just a small example. Right, there's a famous historian named Arnold Toynbee. He's dead now, but long dead. But anyway, he wrote this 12-volume, 3.5 million, history of the world. Okay. And he said the idea came to him. How the idea came to him. He said, he was on a train or something like that, and he didn't even notice. He just looked down at some point, okay? And he had written some stuff on a page. And he did not even he was not even thinking about what he was writing. It was just there. It just appeared, okay? And those ideas formed the basis of the book. And it was the end of the book was following exactly that form. So I mean, obviously he must have written them down physically, right? But mentally, it just kind of occurred, right? The reality is everything is occurring like this.
Just like revealing our Vedas.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Our
Just
Vedas,
like the
how they
Vedas, just like the
ever-
Vedas. Everything is being revealed. The reality, right? If you think about it, and really look at it, it's very easy to see. You don't need moksha to see that your thoughts are appearing like a teleprompter. You know, they're coming to you, right? So in the same way, you know, everything is done like that.
But you have to be in a state to receive that also. That's what our rishis are like meditate. Or what
Yeah.
the processing.
The
of
shruti
mind.
will be
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Certain special knowledge you have to be in a certain state. But the point is that you know we're afraid that activities cannot happen without our effort. The reality is activities can happen without our effort, but on condition, you know, we can experience that fact for ourselves only on condition that you give up. Whether it does happen or not, you have to allow it not to happen. You have to say whether it happens or not does not concern me. You know, basically, yeah.
That's a surrender.
That's surrender.
That's also surrender.
Or
It's
you
not
could-
surrendering to God or anything.
Well, you can view it as surrender to God if you want. It is. It's the same
like
thing, right? Because you can say let God drive the car if God wants to
Yeah.
drive the car.
Yeah.
You know, basically.
Then I have a different question, like from the focus that you mentioned in the
Mhm.
beginning. So, like in Vishnu Sahasranamam and all, no, like you have lots of namas that you say, 1,000 namas of God.
Mhm.
But people view it like, why should I say 1,000 namas? And all? But the 1,000 namas saying is nothing but you become that. Like for example, you are pure.
Yes.
That means you become pure.
Mhm.
You are not saying the God.
You're
You are
invoking
God
it.
and you become pure.
You're invoking
You
it.
become sincere.
Mhm.
You become dedicated. You love like that. Like so that means like with the focus is to become like that, and you become the self.
Yeah.
So you like I was asking you the other day whether any kind of focus for intense so many hours is the same as focusing on the self. But your answer today clarified my doubt the
Yeah.
other day. You focus on the self to become like self. Become
Yeah,
you
that's true.
become
Exactly.
a self.
Yes.
Because not maybe the research focus or other focus
Yes.
may not mean the same thing.
Correct.
May not mean the same thing, or focus on my reflection of the lines of slokas or Upanishad may not be the same thing.
It's not quite the same.
But,
thing, correct.
but focus on the self of negating through all the just like 150 negation talked about in the Ribhu Gita, right?
Yeah. Well, you negate, and again, see, it's not just negation. I always say you want to look to the positive experience that you're having, right? It's not just not this is a consequence of looking at your current positive experience because it feels like I'm here. That feeling, when you investigate it, as you investigate it, you will then automatically negate, right?
Yeah.
But the point is not just the negations for their own sake. The point is looking for your
that's right.
current experience. And you know, you're talking about the Vishnu Sahasranama and other prayers like that. Again, it's wonderful preparatory work for the mind.
Like it's not even preparatory. It's not even you are praising God or anything. You are not praising the Murti. You are really trying to become that
but
you.
No,
So
but
those
why you have
things-
to become like that? See, that's what.
No, not become like what I mean.
You're invoking
These are all
those-
the characteristics of the self.
Yes.
Is like self inside is.
Yeah, but self doesn't have any judgment for
No,
self.
not judgment or anything
No.
of the sort. It's nothing but abstract. No, the abstract form is.
I mean,
nothing
this is what I'm struggling with the rituals. Okay, I mean,
Karma
definitely. No,
Karma
my
kanda.
experience. My experience. Okay.
Karma kanda.
Yes, definitely it helped me. That knowledge base initially helped me to reach even the thought of self-inquiry. Okay, because I was like with so many negative vasanas, but practicing these rituals like pujas, chanting, put me in a position where I am beyond this. But now I'm now I'm thinking, for example, if I chant Vishnu Sahasranama every day 1,000 times or one time, that really needed even to figure out what I am.
That is the kindergarten level.
Yeah,
not
I mean, I'm not saying it's
nothing
it's
of the sort.
bad.
Nothing of
Nothing-
that.
nothing-
You can compare to that with the
Yeah,
spiritual mind and look at it that way.
Look,
You don't have to be like it's.
There's nothing wrong. There's nothing
No,
wrong.
I'm not saying
with
not
it.
wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not saying not
If
wrong.
you don't, if you don't find it helpful, don't do it. It's fine. That's okay. But
No, it's
you know,
not
it's-
even
it's-
helpful also.
yeah.
Is it
Karma kanda.
required? I mean, my requirement for that
Yeah,
for
yeah.
self-inquiry is dropped.
If we can do
I
self-inquiry
mean,
without that,
yes,
it's okay.
that's right.
If we these are tools only.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I agree with
Yeah.
that part.
I was asking Akilesh the same thing yesterday, which is like, so for example, the Kriya Yoga practice that I was saying,
Yeah.
is I like to do that practice, which is the Sushumna breath and opening up, balancing the Ida Pingala and opening. Whatever that practice is, generates a lot of bliss.
Yeah.
Puts me into a place from which I can do self-inquiry.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Vishnu Sahasranam also will open your Vishuddhi chakra.
Yeah.
So it's also a yogic method.
No, I agree. I agree.
So I think if you don't want it, you don't need to.
No, but if he doesn't need
I
the
agree,
practice
I
to
agree.
get into that
Exactly.
state,
I mean,
you don't need it.
Yeah,
would that be okay?
that's exactly
Akilesh?
right.
Do it.
No, that's fine. I think
But
what I,
sometimes
I think what
you
I told Raj, which I would tell everybody, right, is everybody's different, right? And so, examine your own path, right? And notice, basically the litmus test is, by doing some activity, does it further the practice? Do I do the
Yeah.
practice? If it does, then it's helpful, and if it doesn't, then it's unhelpful, basically.
Otherwise,
That's
the people sit and watch soap opera.
Agree.
I have all the time in the world. I can be sitting and watching and still know I can be.
That's what Akilesh was saying
At
yesterday.
least this one is.
Yeah,
like-
I mean,
No.
sure. I'm not. I'm certainly, of course, I'm.
I'll put it slightly differently. See, every day your status is different.
Yeah.
Some days you can focus more,
Correct.
some days you cannot. So those days you can go straight into inquiry, that's
Yes.
great.
Agreed.
Some days whatever you try, mind won't cooperate.
Yeah.
So you need some other
I
way.
mean, maybe like for me, I mean, definitely like what Geeta ji said, like earlier, I need to move away from this negative thing. Instead of watching soap opera, chit chatting, or like social media, these things are definitely like
Yeah.
Vishnu Sahasranam or satsang with good people. But now, like I feel again, I'm
Now
not
you
trying
can
to
go to
elevate
Somara
myself.
and do,
No, I don't need any
Yeah,
of
you
those
can.
things.
Why?
No, I don't need any of those
True.
things.
Who is watching?
Yeah, exactly.
I try to do that.
Problem
Okay, so there's one more
Really?
one person at a time.
One
Let's.
part.
Please,
It's
go ahead.
still a
So, yeah.
Go ahead. Huh?
So earlier you said a very nice thing that if you do these practices, you become in a state where your body and mind is doing activities without you.
Yes.
So that means that you are practicing so much that is it the things which is very trivial like driving or eating or brushing that is muscle memory or you are saying very complicated things also
Yes.
you can just do it
Yes. Well,
without you.
Well,
What is the
again,
logic?
well, the logic is that you're not the mind. You're not the mind, right? So you're identifying. It's like I like this analogy as well of imagine you are a ghost,
Okay.
okay, hovering over the shoulder of Gaurav. That's what you're doing.
And the ghost is the subject.
Well, the ghost is what you think you are. So, yeah, the ghost is the subject. You can say that if you want. Okay, so the point is that this ghost thinks it's controlling Gaurav, but it's not. Gaurav is going to do what Gaurav is going to do. The ghost is not in control. Whether Gaurav chooses to do complicated things or not complicated things, Gaurav can do them or not do them as Gaurav wishes. That's true even now. Whether you do the practice or not, this is the case. You're not actually in control of Gaurav. That's true now. The only question is whether there's going to be an acknowledgement of that fact in some sense through the practice or not.
But things you decide like I want to stand. I decided it.
Well, that's
It's not my body is doing it.
That's what you think.
That's what you think is what it's
Exactly.
Just that we don't know that.
It's an
It's my
enormous
willpower doing it. You are
That is
Avanandi
illusion.
Anu Masayar.
So the illusion that he thinks he
Yes.
is.
Yes, it's an illusion. It's an illusion.
And neuroscience agrees with us.
Yeah, neuroscience agrees for
Neuroscience
sure.
completely
That
agrees
the
with us.
ego? Who is the ghost?
Yeah. Well, look. I mean, ego is whatever it is that feels like I exist right now, as a separate being. See, when it's the ego is a very
It's a small light.
slippery, and it's a small eye. It's a slippery
Small
entity, So, but basically, you could say whatever feels like I'm doing things, I'm in control, I'm experiencing things, okay, or suffering them. That is the ego, basically. Yeah.
Yesterday you talked about how you were actually recommending psychoanalysis or
Yes.
psychotherapy to look into the psychological obstacles.
Yes.
How do we know
अब तो बोल रहे हैं कि मैं
A, that our obstacles in the practice are those psychological structures that we need to work on, and B, how do we work on them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, yeah, so I would just clarify first of all, I would say, you know, definitely not all psychotherapy. We were having this conversation earlier. Not all psychotherapy. I'm definitely a big fan of psychoanalysis and its derivative therapies, and maybe certain other ones. I could, you know, we could go into that separately. You know, which ones exactly. But there are a lot of so-called psychotherapy.
I'm very curious about that because I'm a practicing EMFT.
So I mean, I would say basically, right? You know, I think, you know, generally speaking, you know, if I was going to give a rule of thumb, right, the reality is the vast majority of people, have a lot of psychological baggage. It's just a fact.
The whole
you
world
know?
is mad.
The whole world, basically, right? And so I could almost give it as a universal rule that if you're a serious seeker, you have psychological stuff to deal with. And in this modern world, in this particular age that we're in, you know, good psychotherapy is probably the most generally recommendable way to deal with that stuff. Okay, is what I would say. You know, how does it work? You know, well, basically over time one establishes a deep relationship with the therapist, and through that relationship certain attachments get modified. The way I see it is, right, we have this bunch of attachments, right, and if the attachments are in disarray, they're in inner conflict, right, that creates a lot of agitation, right? So through a therapeutic process, and maybe through certain other processes, maybe therapy is not the only way, but it's one of the chief ways, those attachments can be rearranged so they are less in conflict with each other, basically, okay? And that decreases the agitation in the mind, and that makes it easier to do the practice. Generally, a litmus test, you know, for, again, I could practically give a universal recommendation, but if we want to see, okay, look, what really shows me I need some kind of help, I would generally say that if there is an obstacle to one's motivation to do the practice, like I just don't feel like doing it, and you don't quite know why. Or if you think you know why, but that why is not true, basically, right? So you know, that means there's something hidden in operation, okay? Something which you're not seeing, which is under the hood, that is controlling. And that thing, whatever that is, has to be dealt with.
But
you know?
Akilesh, maybe they're not ready for it.
Yeah, well, absolutely, of course, 100%, yes.
But Akilesh,
But it's
all
also
these things you mentioned about the psychotherapy, they're all like about, like you mentioned, streamlining the attachments.
Yeah.
Again, that is worldly things.
Well, that streamlining attachment is streamlining one's psychological issues, right? So it's and this is also why this is what in the old way of thinking about things, which is not, of course, there's a lot to it, right? Is, for example, right, living a certain lifestyle, right? This streamlines attachments, right? So, for example, obviously things like diet and sleep, but also things like morality. Again, I think I mentioned this, you know, yesterday.
Yama niyama.
Yeah, exactly. All those kinds of things, right? So, you know, not lying and not getting into fights with people, or, you know, speaking kind words only. These are ways of streamlining various attachments, basically, and decreasing the amount of mental agitation. Because basically, the noisier your mind is, the harder it is to do the practice. But the practice itself, of course, weakens attachments. Practice itself is super powerful, you know, weapon against the attachments. But it does take, it does take a certain degree of, organization to use the practice consistently in the first place. Okay, so you know, you may have to go and deal with that. So I always give this example as an interesting example. I may have given it last year, I can't remember, but there's a very famous Zen monk from a few hundred years ago named Hakuin. Okay, and Hakuin was a very dedicated monk. He really wanted, you know, liberation. And so, you know, he would spend 18 hours a day, right, you know, with essentially something like self-inquiry. And, you know, he got some kind of illness, you know, as a result of this kind of extreme stress, called meditation illness of some sort, okay? And, you know, and he went and talked to some of his elders, and they said, look, go deal with it, right? And so, they recommended some other monk and who gave him some special practices to deal with that particular kind of issue, okay? Whatever that issue was not, it wasn't spiritual per se. It was some kind of psychophysical issue, okay? And he had to go and deal with it. And what he says after that is, look, if something like that happens to you, it's okay, even if you're like me and doing the practice 18 hours a day, to step away from it, to deal with this at this other level, because you may need to do that. You may need to go to whatever that level of that obstacle is and deal with the obstacle at that level. So for example, if it is, in fact, let's say a serious illness, there's nothing wrong with treating the illness if that's going to decrease your mental agitation and enable you to do the practice better. Now, is it true that technically speaking, the practice can overcome everything? Yes, it can, but the problem is, are you willing to do the practice all the time? If the motivation is being affected to do the practice.
It's like a chicken or the egg.
It's a chicken or egg situation.
Yeah.
So I say, right, you have to go with whatever you're ready for, like you said, whatever you're capable of. In a way, the game is understanding yourself. Like, what am I willing to do? Where can I go next? You're presented with a kind of maze. You can't. It may seem like the goal is right over there, but you can't get right over there. You're not capable of it, right? So where can I go? What can I do? What am I willing to do? And how can I streamline what I have to make progress, basically?
Yeah.
And it can happen in many ways, right? It could be something like simple as eating different food, or associating with different people, or reading a little bit more Ramana, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you're
More
capable of doing, do.
practices.
Yeah.
So the
different
psychoanalysis
practices.
is understanding yourself better.
Yeah, I would say
But
psychoanalysis understanding also can give people profound. It's not just understanding; it's different experiences. Is what it is. You get a certain kind of experience with somebody, which can change your vasanas kind of directly.
Right.
You might say.
So you're so close to your problem, only somebody else can look at it and fix it.
Definitely,
But
that's part of
sometimes
it.
the role model helps you. Somebody behaves the way you behave. You are not able to observe your behavior.
Yes.
Somebody comes and behaves the same way, or somebody has a similar problem as you, suddenly strikes, okay, what a fool I am, I should not have
Yeah,
been-"
that can happen too.
Right?
Yes, that's one of
For
the
example,
things. Sure.
some problem, and all our friends will all have the similar problem. Because
Sure.
being in the same age group, same problem, same solutions, then okay, this is how it's happening.
Yes.
It's a kind of
Yes.
thing.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
what does one? Sorry, I was wondering, what does one say to a psychoanalyst if you have no major issues? What do you?
Well,
for
actually.
example, I may not be have the discipline that it
Uh-huh.
needs to do self-inquiry all the time.
Uh-huh.
But if I met a psychoanalyst, I wouldn't know what to say. Tell
Well,
them.
you could
If
say.
I say that I can't practice self-inquiry,
Sure.
what would the psychoanalyst not even have the context to?
No,
know
that's
what
it.
I'm
So it's a good question. So I mean, I know I really should create a I should really create a talk
Okay.
explaining analysis better. But anyway,
Okay.
No, I'll answer your question though. So psychoanalysis is not, their purpose is not to give you recommendations or advice, okay? And nor does it matter with a good psychoanalyst whether they necessarily understand something like self-inquiry.
Okay.
Their purpose is to listen to you
Uh-huh.
and to connect with you at a deep emotional level.
Okay.
And so at least the original idea of psychoanalysis, it's still the case really, is you say whatever comes to your mind.
I see.
It's like a meditation in that sense. Whatever comes to your mind, whatever comes to your mind, okay, whatever it may be.
Okay.
And you yourself may notice, like, I don't want to talk about certain things. Oh, this came to my mind, I'm going to omit that. There's all kinds of things that can happen like that are
I see,
interesting.
I see, okay.
And that's good to take note of. But through that process of just talking about whatever comes to your mind, you will find things arise
Got it.
automatically.
Got it.
Yeah.
And are there
Absolutely.
other
Sanskrit.
psychotherapeutic approaches
Read this.
besides psychoanalysis?
Yes, there are. There are many other psychoanalytic, there are other therapeutic approaches. Some better than others, basically. And so I can't pass blanket judgments on all of them, but I would say that. See, psychoanalysis is a very technical term. It's very demanding kind of therapy, and there's also what are called like psychodynamic therapies, which are a broader category, and I would say those are all good, basically.
Okay.
A lot of caveats attached. If someone's really interested in that, they can talk to me individually, and I can help them find somebody. But basically, yes, I mean, even within psychoanalysis, within psychodynamic therapies, you may have to go to 2 or 3 different people before you find somebody that clicks, for example, right? That's totally fine. There's a certain thing called match. You know, you need to feel a certain rapport with the person.
Just like my dentist.
Yeah, exactly. Just like your dentist. Precisely. So I would say that.
And the goal is what? Like,
Yeah.
The goal is to
To see all
Hopefully-
the obstacles, maybe.
Knock on the door
rearrange.
faster.
Rearrange some of your. See, if there's, it's like for example, if you have like a machine where the parts aren't assembled that well, you know, like inside, right? The things aren't working. There's like they haven't been oiled correctly or whatever. There's certain things that are like grinding
It's a
against each
machine.
other.
Gearbox.
Can we rearrange them? And a good therapist over time, they may not be able to revolutionize everything, but even a 10-degree change, you know, can be a huge difference.
Even a lubricant could be a difference.
Yes, it could be a huge difference because
Akilesh, can you give us a concrete example?
yeah, a concrete example is, I mean, I give myself. Okay, it's a concrete example. So, you know, I mean, I was in psychoanalysis 3-4 times a week for many years, and you know, it's very interesting because it's I think it was absolutely crucial to me as a seeker. It may not be crucial to everybody, but I've seen in many of my students a lot of changes that happen when they take up good therapy. And what really happens is, it's a very good question. I think there is, like I say, there's a powerful emotional connection with the therapist that then allows changes in the unconscious mind, you know? Like the way that you view yourself, the way that you view other people may change. And it could be subtle changes, but even subtle changes are important because people have a lot of baggage that often comes from their upbringing, okay? Their upbringing raises them a certain way, and then they take that into the world, they live that, and that compounds, right? So they may have certain messages that they've absorbed from their childhood about who they are, what they can do, how they should be in the world, how they should relate to people. And those kinds of assumptions that are built into their programming are very deep and can cause problems. They can cause them like a lot of mental agony, basically. And so, you know, if those assumptions can be softened, and the way you soften them is not by trying to reason somebody out of it, like, oh, you're being so irrational. That's not the point. That's not going to do anything. Some deep contact has to be made between 2 people, or maybe more than 2 people anyway, but the point is 2 people in this normal therapeutic situation, where that relationship somehow, and I can't give you a full explanation here, but somehow that relationship allows access to those deeper pieces and can create a softening of those problematic ways of being in the world. And that changes the emotional landscape. It can make someone less depressed, it can make someone less anxious, it can make someone more self-accepting, less self-critical. All those kinds of things, right, decrease the noise in the mind. And they enable greater practice, right? Certain energy that may have been locked up in constantly beating yourself up, for example, right? That energy, you don't even realize it's being
And you
spent
won't
like
even know that you're doing
You won't even know you're doing that.
Yeah.
But you're automatically avoiding certain things, you're avoiding certain people, you're avoiding certain situations, you built your life in a certain way to avoid certain things you don't like, right? And then where is the energy for the practice? Because you're locked up, like fearing certain things and avoiding certain things, right? And you don't even realize that your whole life is built around this kind of set of patterns. So those patterns can be softened, and if that will release energy, basically, that they can come to the
It says that you're missing a particular part of the world because of your own
Yes,
beliefs.
yes, exactly.
So the conversation can just begin as in, I may not know I
Yes,
have any problem, but
yes,
I just say, hey, I just
yes,
wanted to talk to you.
absolutely.
I'm a happy person, but
Yes.
I just want to, but then something might come up.
Yes, something will definitely come up because whatever it is that you say, you cannot say anything random. You know,
I see.
Whatever you say, there will be stuff that is said. Yeah.
So another thought that came up for me now is that there's also tendency for spiritual bypassing that a lot of people do, where spirituality becomes a way to avoid
Yes.
their psychological baggage,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And you will hit a wall
Yeah,
when
definitely.
you take that approach.
Yeah.
And you'll be stuck, or you'll be beating on some wall and not able to get past.
Absolutely.
a certain
Yes.
point.
That's correct. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that has
Exactly.
been my
Correct.
experience,
Correct.
where there was a lot of stuff that I had to deal with, and I was exposed to spirituality, I was exposed to Vedanta. I loved it. So it was kind of a dual track in my mind, where there is a raga for the spiritual, like like Swamiji's lectures and the books and watching YouTube videos and all that. But there was also a kind of a dvesha or an aversion of things that maybe I should have been doing, or kind of running away from myself.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Yes,
So,
yes.
but until I could work that out and come to this place where I'm fully integrated, like I'm here today because I know why I'm here today. I'm not running away from anything.
Yeah.
It's the grounded reality that I'm talking about. Except that it's still my ego that's grounded in this reality, that I'm a seeker.
Yes, exactly. You have to have a functioning, basically you want a relatively well integrated ego. Because if you look, for example, right, people always talk about this, right? If you look at the traditional requirements for seekers, right? They have so many requirements, right? You need vairagya, you need viveka, and then you need six treasures, right? All these things. Emotional maturity, this, that, the other thing, right? Ramana has said jokingly somewhere, like, maybe nobody in the history of the world has ever had all these qualifications, basically. It's like all these emotional requirements, right? Yeah. And if you don't have the requirements, go, maybe a few more janmas, right? Maybe 100 lives from now you'll be qualified, right? So you go do more rituals, and that is purifying. It is purifying. But it's now in this particular landscape where everybody is just coming to this knowledge, which is a good thing, right? Coming to this knowledge directly, it's great. But if you are still stymied by emotional issues, then you're going to have to deal with them. Otherwise, you will hit that wall. It's just inevitable. It's one way or the other. You're going to be forced to look at those things.
So only when the time comes, you will come into this also.
That's right.
My experience.
Correct. Yeah.
But you can also, like in like some of the commentaries on Patanjali or Sutra, they say that you can start anywhere in the 8 steps.
Yeah, you can.
And
100%.
the other steps will unfold for you.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah,
because you don't have to start with yama niyama and have it down to perfection before you can move to asana.
No, I fully agree. I fully agree.
But
That's why I'm teaching
you
this.
might start with that, but you might slip into a very
and that is where there is a 9 obstacles which is listed.
Because the reality is, the spiritual practice, even when you're dealing with the other things, will give you some strength. You know, I've noticed in various students, right? For example, if people are going to therapy and they are starting to confront certain emotional issues, that when they have the background of surrender or inquiry, it gives them a powerful strength to be able to open up more easily.
Yes. Yes.
So they're very complementary, actually. And I keep saying therapy. I mean, there are other ways to do it. It's not like that's the only way. I'll just note, but I just tend to recommend it a lot because I feel like it's like the most reliable of the methods, basically, in this world right now. But there are other methods. I think certain relationships can really change people, right? Not just with the therapist, but other kinds of certain healthy relationships can be very, very transformative. So, that's something to keep in mind. But basically, it's not really, I think, emotional stuff is mainly not about, people think it's, again, very intellectual. Like, I'm going to reason myself out of these things, but you're not going to reason yourself out of these things. Possibly new experiences with different people could be helpful, That may be the only way you get out of certain situations.
Like corrective experience,
corrective experiences, exactly. Like certain kinds of friendships, certain kinds of romantic relationships, certain teachers or certain other kinds of relationships you have where let's say somebody treats you in a different way than you're used to.
Yeah.
Listens to you in a different way than you're used to. Those kinds of experiences can be very powerful and can change your view of yourself. So, all right. Well, I think we're over for today. So thank you all for coming, and I will see you all. Some of you hopefully for meditation tomorrow. And then we don't have any workshop. We don't have any talk tomorrow night, but then it'll resume on Wednesday. Okay.
So you attend Sarva Priyananda's talks in New York?
No.